Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of My Way Conversations with Entrepreneurs Doing Business Outside the Box. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and super excited to be here with you for another episode. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, this is our final guest of the 2023 season. So we're super excited about this. You'll be seeing kind of a culmination of all of the episodes coming up in a couple of weeks. So definitely be on the lookout for that because we love to do kind of the mashups of some of the most pivotal moments of the season. So be on the lookout for that. Our guest tonight is an author, screenwriter, speaker, and writing coach, helping aspiring authors write the novel they've always wanted, even while working a full-time job. And one of the things that I love about our guest this evening is that he doesn't just teach this, he lives it. He is an example of it because it's been part of his life. He established his company and published his very first fantasy novel, which I get to be Vanna White this evening, you guys. Jewels of Fate, here it is. He did that while he was a senior in high school. Do you believe that? Very excited to welcome our guest this evening. One of our youngest entrepreneurs we've had on the show as well. So excited about that. Please welcome Tyler Snure. Tyler, we're so excited to finally have you on the show. We met up a long time ago now, so this is great.
Hello, everybody. I'm so excited to be here. Jessica, thank you so much for having me on the show.
Absolutely. I was telling Tyler behind the scenes, I'm like, listen, I've been dragging my feet getting my next books done. And so I find that you know what they say about surrounding yourself with people that are, doing the things you want to be doing. I'm like, this is what I'm doing. So everybody else, it's great you're here, but this is for me tonight, just FYI. So yes, I'm so excited about this. And I think what really inspires me about your story is what I talked about in the intro, which is that you've been able to get your books done with a full plate, with a lot of other things going on. And that's my life. So I'm taking inspiration from you tonight, Tyler.
Awesome.
I'm excited. Well, let's get started and talk a little bit about your journey up until this point, because you were super young when you wrote that first book and started your company, Snure Story. Am I saying I'm saying your name correctly, right?
Yep, Snure. Okay. Snure Stories. Yep.
And I wanted to kind of get a handle on, like, did you always want to be a writer? Was that always a thing for you, or did it come maybe earlier in high school? Tell me about how you got to this is what I wanted to do.
Yeah, for sure. I've always wanted to be a writer. I've known that as far back as I can remember. However, I never knew that you could actually make a business out of it. And I really didn't realize that authors are also entrepreneurs in a very untraditional way, but we are very much entrepreneurs.
Right.
I didn't realize that till probably about high school. When I launched Snure Stories after receiving a grant from a program called the Summer Company. So the Summer Company is a local program in my area that gives grants to high school students who want to start their own business. Oh, and wow. I came forward and said, hey, I want to start a writing business. I've got this book that is like almost done. I want to get it published. Here's my idea. And they said, yeah, let's do it. So I was able to get the grant, and that's how Snure Stories was born. And the Jewels of Fate was published 2 months later.
Wow. Now I'm probably jumping ahead a little bit, but I want to know a little bit about this grant because, typically we see grants for people who are starting companies that in my mind are more than just like you writing. Like, do you have plans to bring on other authors into Snure Stories, or is this always going to be just your writing?
I've thought about it. I'm undecided at this point because we're still in the, relatively early stages of the business. Yeah. I know I want to make it a brand where, multiple books are, like published under this brand. What that looks like in fine detail, I don't exactly know yet. So yeah, I guess bringing other authors into this is a possibility. Or it might be more like a publishing company side of things where, they send me the book and then I, publish it for them. That's ways away though.
Yeah. Yeah. I know. I figured I was getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I was curious about where the grant was concerned, like what your vision was when you
Mhm.
presented it I'm assuming you had to make like some type of presentation in
Yes.
order to get the grant.
Yes. So my business plan and business model, the first year I launched the company, that's the plan I presented to the summer company associates, was basically just how to market and how to publish this first book
Mm,
that I was just starting out. So it included things like, what were the publishing costs? What would it look like on launch day to, have a book launch? And then afterwards, what does the next few months look like in terms of getting booked in libraries and schools and marketing campaigns and Amazon and all of that. And I really had to, research like what is the cost of publishing a book? Like what are the
mm.
steps? What's it going to take?
Right, right.
Mhm.
Now, are you as much of a reader as you are a writer? Is that something that maybe fueled your writing?
Oh, absolutely. I've loved reading ever since I was a little kid. I still read now, and I even love reading, teen, middle grade fantasy
Mm,
fiction. The stuff that's in my genre, right? So I grew up with series like Percy Jackson, Harry
right.
Potter.
Yeah.
Still my favorite series to this day.
I'm a
Uh,
big Harry Potter fan, like
okay,
like
I'm in good
big,
company
big.
then. Yeah.
Yeah. Love it. Yeah, well, I mean, it's because the first book came out when I was a teenager.
Mhm,
And so I really kind of and it came at a time when I was really struggling as an adolescent. And so
mhm.
the idea that I could be taken into this magical world, like it was an escape for me. And I just couldn't get enough. I was done with that book in like, I don't know, 48 hours or some
Oh,
nonsense.
wow, wow. That's even better than me.
It was, and I don't typically read fast like that, but
Mhm,
it's one of those things that just takes you in, right?
mhm.
I love that.
Absolutely.
I love that. So you grew up with kind of with those type of fantasy book, and that is your genre, if you
Mhm,
will, for Jewels of Fate, right?
mhm. Yes, I actually have two massive bookshelves in my room that are just like overflowing. Like I'm gonna need to buy a new bookshelf soon because I'm
Yeah.
running out of space.
My daughter would say the same thing.
Yeah.
She's constantly, she goes to the library and they have like these free book bins, and every
Mhm.
time she'll come home with a book and I'm like, but you have no space
Yeah,
left.
yeah. It's a good problem to have.
I know, I know. There's much worse, many things that I could be more worried about as a parent. I
Exactly.
suppose. So the reading tied into your passion for writing. Now, tell me a little bit about your support system as far as like going into this world of writing. Did you have a good support system? Did you have teachers, parents that were encouraging your writing, or what did that look like?
Yeah, all of the above.
Mm,
And I was very lucky to have a strong support system.
mm,
I know others, unfortunately they don't have that when they start,
right.
their entrepreneurial journey and it's really all on their shoulders, which, I was fortunate enough to have, parents who are willing to contribute a little bit and even um, I'll talk about this in more detail in a little bit, but when I left school, they really understood and they're like, okay, yes, we support this, we see the vision, we see where this is going, like we'll back you on this.
Right.
And but just right from the beginning, my mom actually about 15, 16 years ago published her own children's book. And at a young age, right, I would have been about 5 or 6 at the time.
Wow.
Knowing someone who's an author and who's written a book is just the coolest thing. So, I would go to school and I tell my friends, like, my mom's a famous author, and it was just, yeah, the I thought it was the coolest thing, and that really pushed me towards writing, as well
Mhm.
as the books that I was reading at the time.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Yeah, no, I imagine that was wildly helpful because it's one thing to have support, but it's another thing to have support from people who have done it
Mhm.
and who have been in that world. Do you imagine that you would still be doing what you're doing if you didn't have the support or you didn't have the people to look up to that have done it, or do you think maybe you'd still be doing it and it just might have taken longer?
I would say, I think, knowing myself, I'm a very driven person. I'm a
Mm,
very ambitious person. So I think I would still be on this path, absolutely, but not nearly as far without that support system backing me for sure.
right. Right. So you wrote the book senior year, you started your
Mhm.
company senior year. What happened after that point?
So COVID happened.
Oh, that that
Yeah,
little thing.
yeah, that little blip. It was actually funny. I tell people this, and for whatever reason, it horrifies them. But back in 2020, Amazon was just starting paperbacks. So
Mm,
in 2019, all you could publish was an ebook, and then in 2020, Amazon started, distributing paperbacks, and they opened a printing house in Ontario. So it was actually, cheaper to ship them from like up north in Ontario rather than
mm.
across the border. That's where I'm from. I'm from St. Catharines, Ontario, about 20 minutes from the Buffalo border. And I think the printing plant was in Bolton, Ontario, so about 2 hours north. Um, anyway, the day that I got my first shipment of paperbacks was the same day COVID-19 hit Canada.
What? I don't
Mhm.
know what kind of sign to take that as, Tyler.
I don't know. March 13th, 2020. I'll never forget the date.
You won't now.
Yeah.
That's wild. That's
Mhm.
wild. And then, so what was that like for you? Like, did it change how like your launch went for the book? And I mean, I'm imagine everybody's focus was
Split.
everywhere else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And for good reason. Yeah,
Yeah.
there are bigger issues to deal with at the time.
Right.
Um, so when the books came, I had one day to deliver any pre-orders to friends at school, teachers that wanted to buy, and then that was it. And then instantly everything shifted to online. And actually, my book launch was scheduled a couple of weeks after that, and it got like totally canceled because of the
Wow.
pandemic.
Wow.
Hmm.
That's crazy. I mean, what were the feelings that came up for you with that? Like, I imagine you were so excited about this launch, and then it was like, well, sorry, anything
Yeah.
but that.
Hmm. Definitely confusion, frustration, maybe a little bit of anger
Yeah.
at, why was this happening? It was really a moment where I had to learn kind of how to adapt and how to pivot and shift.
Mm. That's gonna go a long way in the entrepreneur world.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Well, I mean, I tend to be a person that believes that things happen the way that they're supposed to happen, even if in the moment we're like kicking and screaming,
Mhm,
why me, but then always on reflection, literally every point in my life I can see on reflection why it worked out the way that it did,
mhm.
even if it was kicking and screaming along the way. Do you see that now, being able to look back at that moment?
Yeah, I'd say so because, even now when, things are relatively back to normal, I still do a lot of online things. Like I use Zoom all the time now.
Mm,
I use Zoom for pretty much everything, like online meetings,
yeah.
conferences, like whatever it is. But I had no idea what Zoom was pre-pandemic.
Right.
So, ah,
Yeah, that was a learning thing for everybody. And see, it's so funny to me, that whole situation, because I had been in the online space years prior,
mhm,
since like 2015. I had been doing my business online, and so I had been doing, I think I was a little bit ahead of my time, maybe, because everybody
yeah.
was sort of coming into this space, and I'm like, "Hello, I've been here this whole time." So it was interesting to see, for sure, people have to pivot like you were talking about,
Mhm,
and maybe get used to some of the softwares and other things online when that's not something that they did before. So 2020 happened. How did like what did the launch look like if you weren't able to do the online things or the in-person things?
So what happened was a lot of people were supposed to pick up the book at the launch. So anyone who's interested, you know how a launch typically works is you meet in one space, you have a signing, and
Right.
people pick up the book for the first time in person.
Right.
That wasn't an option now. So what I did was I got in my car, I had a huge stack of books in my back seat, and I just drove all over, dropping off books one by one. I'd, ring the doorbell, sprint back 6 feet, and then they open the door and like take the book, and then I'd go on to the next person. And
Oh
I
my
did that for about
gosh.
2 weeks, just getting all of the
Wow.
pre-orders done.
Mobile book launch, like that's
Mobile
an
book
idea.
launch. Yeah. Yeah. Is it the
That's
most
wild.
efficient idea? Maybe not.
Yeah, because I'm not sure that we had to calculate in the price of gas into the actual cost of
Yeah,
the
true. I
book.
didn't even think of that. Yeah, it added up in gas for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, what great customer service though, too, because I mean, you could have easily, I suppose, returned the books and said, well, everybody has to order online now and all of that. But that's awesome that you were able to do that. So COVID happened and all
Mhm.
of that, and we had the book come out. Now let's fast forward to kind of how things have gone in life and moving into, because this is only Jewels of Fate was just
Mhm, mhm.
book one. So we have other plans for 2 and 3. Is COVID ever going to end?
Yeah. So in 2022, so last year, I was able to launch The Sword of Sorenth, which
Mm.
is the sequel to the Jewels of Fate, and I was able to have an in-person launch party, which was
Yes.
super super exciting, super fantastic. It went really well. I had a great turnout. Um, I had to do the mobile book launch part though because not because of COVID, but Amazon was backlogged with pre-orders. So the books came after my launch date. So everyone showed up to the launch party in person, and we had a great time. And I did some speaking and kind of shared a bit about the book, but the book wasn't actually there yet.
Wow.
Mhm.
Can we listen? This is what I need everybody to do. I need everybody to put the good vibes out there that for book 3, there is no hiccups for Tyler. Oh, no COVID, no book, backlogged, none of that. Need it to go smoothly.
Yeah, yeah. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, right. So, but the second book made it onto the bestseller list, right?
It did. It did. So during its launch week, The Sword of Saranth climbed to number 8 in
Mm.
the fantasy category on Amazon.
Awesome. Awesome.
Which,
Very exciting. Very
mhm.
exciting. And are you self-published? I mean, obviously Snore Stories, so you don't have another publisher behind you, right?
No, it's totally self-published. That way I could, have my own business surrounding it.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
That's exciting. And so it's hard to do when you're self-published to get on the
Mhm.
bestseller list. So I really have to pat you on the back for that, because that's not an easy feat at all.
No, no, it took a lot of work,
Mm.
a lot of hustle for sure. I launched the Sword of Sorenth at the very, very end of the summer, so that whole summer was just insane, like
Mm.
prepping for book launch. I think I was, finishing the last minute edits during like July too, so it was just a crazy time.
Right. Right. So there's a third book. Do you have the title of that one?
I have a few titles in mind, but I'm keeping it under
Okay.
wraps just until I know for sure.
Very good. So when do you anticipate the third one come out?
I would say probably 2025. I
Okay.
know that sounds far away, but we're
Yeah.
already at the end of 2023 pretty
I know.
much.
Where did it go?
Yeah,
It's the
seriously.
question.
Yeah. So I'm on a 3-year schedule right now. So the
Okay.
Jewels of Fate came out 2019, Sword of Sorunth 2022.
Gotcha.
So book 3 probably will be 2025.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. And kind of
Mhm.
people can expect that expect that timeline, I guess, which is good too.
Mhm.
So that's awesome that you have the third one and a plan, and we're gonna send the good vibes all the way until
Yeah, yeah.
2025. So in the meantime of you writing these books, we mentioned that you had a full plate, you've had a lot of things going on. We've heard about high school. What else has been going on in your life as you're trying to, because I want to show you guys, this is not um I would show you, listen, I don't even have mine right here. I would show you my book. Like this is something. This is a piece of work here. It's big. So there's a lot of effort that goes into that and a lot of time, I'm assuming. So what else did you have going on in your life as you're juggling writing these books as well?
Yeah, absolutely. So, like I mentioned earlier, the first book came out when I was in high school. But then in 2022, the second book launched when I was in university. So
Mm,
that was like high school was here, and then university is here.
yeah.
So I remember like 2021 was when I was like working on the first draft of the
Mm,
Sword of Strength. And I remember like having to try and fit in like an hour of writing a day, just to meet, my word count and, stay on pace to launch by 2022, on top of dealing with a full 5 classes,
mhm.
which was very difficult and a lot of juggling for sure.
Right, right. And that's part of what you help people with
Mhm.
is being able to get their books done while they're working a full-time job. Maybe they're going to school, maybe they have, I don't know, 6 children, or I might know somebody like that. And so they have a lot going on. Can you give us like maybe some of the suggestions to, let's just at the very beginning, that they can even write a book with so much going on? What are some of
Mhm.
the things you tell people?
Yeah, absolutely. So time is the biggest barrier I see that keeps people
Mm.
from writing a book. So someone will come to me and they'll say, Tyler, I would just, love to write a book, but I have X, Y, and Z on my plate and I just can't do it. And I feel like there's this common misconception that writers, all they do is write. And, they sit in little cafes, they've got their coffee beside them, some nice jazz music playing in the background, and they can just write for hours with no
Right,
interruption, and it's just beautiful.
right,
And yes, there are lucky days like that, I'm not gonna lie. Like those days do exist, but those days are not every day by any means.
right,
So you really have to learn, like if this is something that you want to do, you have to really learn to work it into your life and then the things that are already in existence, whether that be school, whether that be maybe you're on a travel sports team that requires a
mm,
lot of commitment and time. Maybe
right,
you're a musician, like that's a huge time commitment. If you've got a full-time job, lot of kids, like young kids,
yeah,
we have all these responsibilities that we just can't ignore, but we also shouldn't shove aside the fact that we want to write a book just because we have those responsibilities.
right, right. No, that may, and I think some of that is mindset where we have to
Mhm,
give ourselves permission to make that time, however we need to do it, to put our writing out there, or make our writing a priority, right?
mhm, absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. It's challenging. It's challenging for a lot of people. I know I struggled for a long time with giving myself permission to do pretty much anything that I wanted to, that wasn't like on that hierarchy of priorities and responsibilities list, right? And so it's interesting. It's an interesting journey for people. I think there's a lot of, is there any other mindset things that you kind of have had to work through as you've been writing your books?
Yeah, absolutely. Another huge uh, barrier or misconception that people have is that when you do find the time to write, it has to be perfect. And I've learned to be okay with those, those writing sessions that might not be the greatest. So if you're rereading your work and you think, oh, this is horrible, like no one will ever want to read this, the fact that you have, 500, 600, 1,000 words maybe written down, you're
Mm,
on the right track. And it's okay that you think they're total garbage
yeah.
because that's what the editing is for.
Right. Right. How long with your books for, can you give us an example of like how long the editing process took for your books?
Yeah, absolutely. So for the Sword of Sorenth, it was 6 months, the editing.
Wow.
Yes. So I pretty
Wow.
much the
Okay.
first half of 2022 was all editing. And then I launched at the end of that summer. The Jewels of Fate, it was a bit longer. It was about 9 months for the editing.
Wow, that's longer than I thought than I thought it was. So did you have somebody else editing for you, or did you do the editing? How did that look?
So my mom helped with the editing because she has a
Nice.
background in editing as well. So what I
I'm
did was
calling your mom.
I keep telling her she should freelance and
I
offer
know.
her services. Um, yeah, so I did the developmental edits and then I did a pass through, like making sure I liked how the sentences sounded and
Mm,
sentence structure and all of that. And then my mom focused more on grammar and line edits,
mm,
because grammar is something that, especially in the English language, it easily slips through the cracks. And
right.
there's software like Grammarly, which I do use and highly recommend.
Yeah.
But even still, like it doesn't like no software is going to 100% ever make your manuscript perfect,
Right.
because your manuscript never will be perfect. But if you want
Mhm.
to make it as best as it could, use those tools, absolutely. But
Yeah.
then go the next step and use your own two eyes to make sure that it looks good.
You touched on something that I was going to ask you, and that's that, could you say that you're 100% satisfied with the two books that you put out? Is there anything that you read through and think, I wish that was a little bit different?
Yep. Yeah. Oh, all the time. Like I read it and I think to myself, what would have happened if I changed this scene? What would have
Mm,
happened if I ended this chapter differently? Like, would that have helped? And it's all
right.
these what ifs but what ifs, like you can't do anything with the what ifs because the book is already published.
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
were stuck in that in the editing phase, then the book never would have gotten written, or
Yeah.
sorry, published. So at some point, you've got to know that it will never be perfect, but it's good. It's good enough.
Right. Right. Could you ever see yourself, especially since you're in kind of the fantasy realm here, could you ever see yourself doing sort of a choose your own story type thing?
I would love that.
Because I'm just thinking, like, from my perspective, if I, so we were, when we were talking before the show, you guys, we were talking about the different types of books that I've written, which are wildly in the personal development realm. And so it's different than a fiction book where I feel like a fiction book, uh, let me backtrack. I feel like the personal development books are kind of like fact, like it's like,
Mhm.
okay, this, where as like if I was to write a fiction book, I don't know that I could ever finish, because I would be like,
Mhm.
well, what if this happens and what if this happens? So I would think for me, I as the author, I would have to do a choose your own story type thing, just to make myself feel
Yeah,
better that it could go different directions.
that's a great option if you're
Yeah.
indecisive about how the book should end.
Yeah.
Do a choose your own adventure.
I love that. I think it's something I would definitely read it if you put something out like that, because I love that sort of thing. Do you know that I was talking to my last show guest about this? Do you know that Netflix has a choose your own adventure movie?
Yeah, I think
Did
it's
you
called
see that?
Bandersnatch. I'm pretty sure it's called.
There's another one. I think it's called Choose Love.
Oh,
So there, I think there's a few now that you
okay.
can you
Wow.
can
Next
go through.
Netflix is popping
But
them out.
but it's for those of you guys that haven't seen this, you can literally sit there with your controller, your remote, or whatever you're using, and it will go through this scene, and at the end of the scene, and it would say like, do you want her to she's met up with her ex-boyfriend, should they get back together, should she ignore him, and then you push the button and that's the next scene. So it's interesting that we can now choose which way movies go.
Wow, that's cool.
It's kind of crazy. It's kind of crazy. But yeah, I think that would be a cool so maybe once your trilogy is
Yeah,
finished,
yeah. Another project down the road.
I'm I'm the queen of ideas. I'll give you 50 more
Yeah,
before
yeah.
the episode's
I'm going to walk away from this interview with like tons of new inspiration.
I'm not short of that. That's for sure. We're going to take a super quick break, and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more about Tyler's entrepreneur journey, things that he's learned, as well as other things. We might have a couple of fun questions along the way too. So we'll be right back after this. Breakthroughs are about more than you might think. They're about discovering who you are, digging deep, reaching to the core of your soul. They're about healing yourself, understanding your beliefs, creating a ripple effect. And it's not just those initial moments that matter. It's about using them to bring more joy into our own lives and the lives of others. It's about having fun, letting loose, enjoying every moment life has to offer. It's about finding a safe space. It's about creating connection. Join us each and every day for exclusive programming, special events, and a community to call home, where we invite you to explore, change the way you look at and live your life, and go beyond the breakthrough. So we ask you, are you ready? We'll see you online at thebreakthroughshow.com. Welcome back to My Way, conversations with entrepreneurs doing business outside the box. We're here this evening with Tyler Snure, who is an author and publishes his own books through his company, Snure Stories. And we're super excited to be I'm super excited to be having this conversation with Tyler tonight, because I'm trying to get back in the vibe of writing my books as well and get it done finally. Tyler, did you ever come up against procrastination yourself?
Oh, all the time. All the time. I've come to realize that social media is synonym for procrastination.
I was going to say, that's got to be one of the things that ties into it. Was there anything else that you found yourself doing instead of writing? And how do you sort of motivate yourself to get back on track?
Found myself reorganizing my writing desk a lot.
I can relate to that. I've redone my desk instead of editing certain episodes before. Yeah, I can. That's relatable for sure. One of the things that I wanted to talk to you a little bit about is your entrepreneur journey specifically, and if there's anything that you feel like you may have learned along the way so far that maybe was not what you expected as far as being an entrepreneur.
Entrepreneurship it's great. It's amazing. It's a way to build a lifestyle that you want. But it is a lot on your shoulders. And like I mentioned before, like I had a great support system,
Right.
But entrepreneurship can be just you a lot of the time. And some people struggle with that. I know, like I've struggled with that from time to time. When you're just writing a novel, and then you're doing all the social media, and a lot of like the marketing activities that I do are very extroverted, which means like I'm talking to people or interacting with people. Like right now, like what I'm doing is a very extroverted activity because I'm on a podcast having a conversation, and however many people are watching this video, like they're seeing me and my brand. But when it's just you, it can be sometimes hard. But then on the flip side, I've heard that when you go into business with someone else and it's 50-50 partnership, then there's a whole bunch of other issues that could come up there.
Right. Yeah, I'm glad that you brought that up, because even in my experience, when I first started the Breakthrough Show before we were a network, I had a partner. And that was just for one season. And then ever since then, I've done it all myself. And it
Mhm.
really is, I think both of them really come with an equal amount of challenges.
Mhm.
And you do sort of, I know for me, I like to be able to have like, a cheering section. There's nobody giving you though when you work for yourself employee of the month.
Yeah.
If you did a good job writing, nobody's there to tell you did a great job. Is there anything you do to sort of combat that? Have you experienced that loneliness, and what do you sort of do to, I mean, other than you mentioned doing sort of extroverted marketing activities, is there anything else that you do to sort of combat that?
Well, I think loneliness is really part of any job, no matter what you do. Like we all face loneliness. It's going to
Mm,
happen at some point or another. The important thing is how do you deal with it? How do you combat it? And like especially in the entrepreneurship world, like self-care is so important
right.
because you're putting your heart and soul into a business. Um, and sometimes when like it goes up and down and you have to expect that too and when you're in those valley moments, you really need a way to pick yourself up, dust yourself off, and keep going.
Right. Right. What are some of the things that you do? Is there anything like you tell yourself? Do you have like motivational posters hanging around your room where you write? Like, tell me what that looks like. How does Tyler build himself up?
Yeah, so I have a few ways. So the first, like I'm a Christian, so my faith is like very important to me.
Mm,
So like to get out of those valleys, like I really like turn to God, and I turn to my church friends and all of that. I also have two posters of my books hanging in my room on my wall that I
nice.
see every morning when I wake up. So that inspires me.
Mhm.
I have something called a shadow box that my aunt made for me, which is basically this glass case with a whole bunch of things that like relate to my business that are inside it. So it has my two books. It has pictures of events that I've been at. It's not just like a decoration, although it does look nice, but it's also a way to remind myself like what I'm doing, what I have done, and what I hope to do.
Mm. I think something you mentioned really important for people, because I actually don't know a whole lot of people that do this, that they'll surround themselves with things that inspire them, but I don't know a whole lot of people that also surround themselves with things that they've done, to remind them of how far they've come and why they should keep going, because they've obviously gotten through things before. Even, it's, you can't see it on camera at all, but this right here is actually a map, and there are
Mhm.
pins in it from all of the countries where I've
Mhm.
ever had anybody on the show interviewed before. And there are days when I wake up and I'm like, have I made a difference?
Yeah,
And then I look and I'm like, oh, I've reached all of those people. And so it's really
exactly.
good that you surround yourself with, those posters of your books. And I know that you have copies of your books and things like that, just a reminder of like, hey, I've done this before. So as you're writing book number 3 and we're all manifesting that smooth the smooth sailing
Yeah, yeah.
for it, you can be like, I've gotten through all of this and I can keep going, right?
Absolutely, yeah. It's so important because you can't. It's so easy to sometimes spiral and just focus on what is going wrong.
Right.
Like oh like that interview didn't go well, or that event didn't go well, or whatever the situation is. It's important to remind yourself of what did go well.
Right. Right. I loved also that you mentioned about your faith, and I think that spirituality can definitely be
Mhm.
such a big player in our business, no matter what that looks like for people. Do
Absolutely.
you feel like your what you're doing, being an author and being a business owner, do you feel like that has a spiritual calling to it?
I think so. But aside from the fact like I really can't see myself in any other
Mhm.
kind of career. Like when I was younger, people would tell me, "Oh, you'd make a great teacher. You should go into teaching." And it's not like that I don't like kids. I love kids,
Yeah.
but I just don't see myself being a teacher for the
Yeah.
rest of my life. That's definitely like not my calling. So I would definitely say that God called me to this, and I'm gonna go after it with everything I have.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And I think sometimes like those little things that other people can see us doing, that's great to have that outside perspective, but it doesn't, we can still do little parts of that, and it doesn't have to be like the focus of what we're doing, because
Mm.
you are still teaching in a way. In
Yeah.
fact, you had a webinar fairly recently, back in the summer. Baker says, I joined your webinar in June, the chapter 1 challenge session, and really enjoyed it. I learned a lot. So you were able to
Oh,
teach
awesome.
through that, right?
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
love that.
absolutely.
Yeah. So you're able to do what you love. You focus on your books, but also like you can do a little bit of that teaching. What are some of the other maybe skills or things that you enjoy doing that aren't necessarily writing, but part of this process, the entrepreneur world?
Absolutely. I'm doing one of them right now,
Oh, yay.
talking to people. Um, I have been privileged to the fact that I don't have stage fright. I have
Oh, that's
many
good.
other fears and many other flaws, but stage fright is not one of them. And
Mm,
my family would make fun of me all the time because I used to be up on stage, in school plays
mm.
and at church and stuff, and then I would not get off the stage. So getting on the stage was the easy part. Getting off was the challenging part. Like
They
someone
have
would have to
the hook.
come up and pull me off once or twice. Yeah, it's happened before. Um, so I think subconsciously, like I think speaking and sharing and presenting has always like something I've wanted to do, and now I've
Mm,
just figured out a way how to work it into my writing business.
yeah. Yeah. I love that. One of the things that I have talked to other authors about when they've come on the show, especially if they're fiction writers,
Mhm.
I'm curious, can we find Tyler in these books?
Oh, I've gotten that question once or twice. Um, no, not by name at least.
Hmm.
There's no Tyler in the Jewels of Fate or the Sword of Soreth. But it's funny because friends or family will say, "Oh, this character is suspiciously like you. Is there a reason for that?" And really, it's completely unintentional. I did
Yeah.
not like plan this story trying to fit me in somewhere.
Mm,
But I do think authors write a part of themselves into the story, and that's just
yeah.
natural because um, you know, you're you, right? Like
Right.
you better than anyone else.
Right.
So like that will come out in your writing for sure.
Right. I think ultimately, like the life experiences you
Yeah.
have are still there, whether you're writing a book or not. Like,
Mhm.
they're gonna come out somehow, whether it's a mannerism from a character, a certain word that's used, or what have you. Is there a
Mhm.
character you feel like you relate the most to?
I feel like I relate to all five of the main characters in
Mm.
different ways. But I'll point out the character that everyone thinks I'm like. Everyone thinks I'm like the main character Chuck, and honestly, I don't see it. I don't see it. I think Chuck is way cooler than me, frankly.
Hey, well, maybe that's a compliment, because
Maybe it
sometimes
is a compliment.
people see things in us that we don't always recognize, we don't always give
Mhm.
ourselves credit for. And so if you're describing this character as having that, you know not just being the main character, but having that main character energy,
Mhm.
and if people are going, hey, that's kind of like you, then maybe we should shift our thinking a little bit and say, okay, maybe that is me.
Maybe. I still don't see it though.
I love that though. I love it. Do you have anything as you're going forward that um you're still in like the writing process of, you're
Mhm.
not in editing yet, right? Of book
Right.
3.
Yeah.
Okay. So do you have anything that you're struggling with as you're writing this book, or anything in particular that you're really looking forward to with the third book? Tell us how the process is going for book 3.
Yeah, absolutely. I've been looking forward to book 3 since book 1.
Yeah.
Because it's a trilogy, right? So it follows the trilogy climax, I guess. So, book 1 introduces all the characters in the world. Book 2, kind of elevates that a little bit, and we go deeper with the characters, and the conflict and the stakes get raised. And then book 3 is like the big finale. And everyone got mad at me when I released book 2 because it did not end the way that they wanted it to, or they thought it should. People very much voiced their opinions on how they thought the second book should end. And I'm not apologizing for it because it nicely sets up book 3, which is the big climax explosion, which I'm very excited about.
Yeah. That's really exciting that you kind of have the picture in your head of how you want it to go. And I think it's so funny though too, because sometimes people even say that to me about like a show and how it went, and they'll be like, that's not how I thought, like, or what I thought you were going to talk about. I'm like, because I have plans for them to come back. Like, things that they don't necessarily know. Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I'm introducing, more monsters in this book, more characters. So what happens is in the first 2 books, the point of view is Chuck, the main character, and Kayleen. In the first book, it flips between the 2 of them. In the second book, 1 additional character gets added. And then the plan is to really, go deep with other characters. So have like multiple points of view on what is happening from different characters in the third book.
That's tough. That's got to be tough to like swap back and forth, because you almost have to like, I imagine as you're writing, like just pretend like you're this person and now you're writing from this person and now you're like, do you ever kind of forget where you are? As funny as it sounds, do you ever be like, who am I today?
Yeah, that's why I outline, and that's why I recommend outlining, especially if you're writing from first person point of view. Because it can sometimes be tricky to pull off when you're navigating between multiple characters. It's a way to really like open the reader's eyes to what's going on in your world. So it's a great writing technique, but it can be risky for sure.
Right. Now, next question. Could you see this series as a movie or miniseries?
My favorite question. Yes, absolutely. So in my bio, it was announced I'm also a screenwriter. So in the last like year and a half, I've kind of stepped into the screenwriting world a little bit. So I have a screenplay in the works. That's kind of like the test run. It's not based on my books, but the idea is if I can kind of learn the craft of screenwriting and I can kind of, get my foot in that world, it'll be easier when I do, bring up my books for adaptation to the big screen.
Right. Now, the important question is here, who do you think could pull off, as of who's an actor right now that could pull off the main character?
Oh, it's a tough question. I would say, it's funny because I thought of this 4 years ago when the Jewels of Fate first came out, but all my answers now are like grown men, like they grew up, so they can't play teenagers anymore, or it'd be hard for them to play teenagers.
That's a problem. Yeah,
that's a problem. So I got to like redo my whole casting list now. Like who's relevant today on TikTok? On Charlie D'Amelio, I think she's big on TikTok and she's like getting into movies now and stuff.
Yeah,
she's maybe her. What other child actors? I'm not big. I don't know many child actors, so that's.
I'm not either. I'm the same exact way. Like I'm still rewatching stuff from when I was growing up. So I'm like, oh, they're grown now. They couldn't do that.
The kid who plays Percy Jackson in the Percy Jackson show. There you go.
Okay. Yeah, that would work out too. Yeah, I know there's some really good. I'll think about it and get back with you too. I've decided because I know when Karen Bullock was on the show as well, and we were talking about her books and movies being made and all of that. I was like, I've made it my mission to come up with a cast list for you.
Yeah.
I love that. So what do you anticipate I know you planned book 3 for 2025. Do you have like a long-term plan of what's going to be next for you? Or what do you envision for yourself as far as your writing and or your company?
Yeah, absolutely. So, beyond book 3, I don't know what I'm going to write yet. I
Mm,
know it'll probably be another series just because series are really, really popular as a business model for writers.
mm,
Because you put out one after the other and the reader can follow the same character over a long period of time. So it's very strategic that way.
right.
I'll probably stay in the fantasy world, might go into sci-fi a little bit.
Mm,
I'm also a fan of young adult in general. Like if you're familiar with the One of Us is Lying series, I
mm,
love that series. Same kind of tone, same kind of, age range in terms of the characters, but it's not fantasy. It's very much YA mystery thriller.
yeah.
So maybe in the future, dipping into that world as well.
Awesome.
Um,
Awesome.
so I do writing coaching as well. So
Mhm.
I'm in the process of launching a few writing programs and options to kind of really help authors who come to me and say, I'd love to write a book, but I don't know how to do it. I don't know how to get started.
Mhm.
I would love to work with teenagers,
Yeah.
because I just would have thought that would have been the coolest thing, like
Yeah.
having someone kind of close to my age kind of help me through the publishing process when I was younger.
Right.
And I think teenagers, there's a lot of teenagers who kind of hide their manuscripts in their
Mm,
drawer, and they don't let people read them, and they don't see themselves as an author because they think they're too young. um,
right.
and I really like I'm trying to break that stigma and break that stereotype.
Right, right. Well,
Mhm.
and I think a lot of teenagers probably too maybe don't have the level of encouragement that you had behind the scenes,
Absolutely.
and not necessarily out of fault to parents, but I think like when I was growing up, I remember not really feeling like a great writer. Like I wouldn't get like good grades on my writing papers and things like that. So it
Mhm.
would never, even though I was always encouraged to write, there was never that sort of mindset piece of going, you're a good writer, so you could do this. And so I think that maybe there's parents out there who maybe also weren't good writers or something. And so they don't maybe feel able to support, if that makes sense too. So having
Yeah.
someone like yourself, I think would be helpful.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things that we love to ask on the show with entrepreneurs is we have a lot of beginning entrepreneurs and or people that are thinking about becoming an entrepreneur that watch this particular show. And when you get started being an entrepreneur, that everybody sort of has their opinion of how you should be doing things, and what entrepreneurship is going to look like. And they might feel like, well, I can't do this because what they're saying doesn't really feel like me, and I don't really know who to listen to, so I'm just going to shelve everything. What would you say to a person who's feeling like they can't do business their way because of a lot of the external things that are going on?
Yeah, I'd say, especially in a digital world today, there's so many voices telling you how to run a business.
Mm,
Um, and there's a lot of good advice out there, but there's also a lot of bad advice out there. So I would say, don't be afraid to ask for help, and don't be afraid to join a webinar, or join a business program if it feels right. But also, don't be afraid to think outside the box and try something new. So for me, what I do is I love learning. So I do business conferences all the time, and summits, and not just to teach and present, but also just to participate and learn from other entrepreneurs.
mm,
And I find is I get all the advice, and then I try it out, and sometimes it works and I'm like, fantastic. Sometimes it doesn't. If it doesn't work, then I always customize it to myself and my own business.
right.
So that's kind of my strategy with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a great reminder, is taking in the information and then taking that time to really process it and say
Mhm.
like, does this apply? And if it does, or maybe it doesn't, and how can I make it fit with what I have going on, because sometimes there is that sort of filter that you have to put there, 'cause there's so much information,
Yeah.
but to be able to put it through a filter and go, does this apply to me? If it does, like, how does it fit? How does it look for me? I think that's such a great reminder for our listeners this evening.
Yeah.
I put your information below, tylersnurestories.com. Let everybody know what they can find when they go to your website.
Yeah, absolutely. So you can find information about the Jewels of Fate and the Sword of Strength. So if you like teen fantasy, young adult fantasy, I highly recommend you check out the books. I also have a writing blog with articles on everything from, entrepreneur kind of stuff to, writing techniques to book marketing techniques that I've learned. So you can check that out as well. I also have a personality quiz on my website. So if you go on the first page right at the top, you can take the What's Your Field of Magic personality quiz, and it will match you with one of the 5 main characters from my books. So you can either be Chuck, Kayleen, Kimmy, Daqua, or Ryan. And if you take the quiz, you'll find out which one you are.
Very good. I wish I would have known that was on there before I would have taken it. And then you could have told me if you felt like it was accurate or not. I'll do that after the show. I love that. And they can find more information about you, and maybe if you have any events or anything going on there too, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That too. Topics that I speak on, because I do a lot of conferences and summits. So all my information about that is on the website as well.
Very exciting. Thank you so much for sharing a little bit of your journey, Tyler, sharing about your characters and your stories. And I guess I would like to ask, as we close up tonight, what is something, because I sort of believe that even through fiction, whether we're talking about music, movies, books, something like that, that there are still sort of those learning lessons. Is there anything from your book that you feel like is a learning lesson for people to take away?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say a big lesson from the book is teamwork and how do you work with others, because there's 5 main characters and they all come from different backgrounds and different circumstances, but really they have to come together to find this ancient relic that could possibly defeat this evil sorcerer that's like causing havoc on the kingdom. It's also really a coming of age story too, especially for the 2 main characters, Chuck and Kayleen. She is like about to become royalty, like she's about to take the crown and become queen. He comes from a family that's about to ship him off to business school. So it's really about also kind of finding your own path as well.
Right. Right. I love those. I think they're even the coming of age, even for those of us who may be a little more seasoned. I feel like so many of us, maybe came into our business or what we really wanted to do in life later on. And so that even be a great theme for us as well. Don't leave us out, Tyler.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That too.
I love it. Thank you so much for being here, sharing your journey. We have all your information in the comments, and I'm so thankful that you're able to share about this. And I will let you know for sure when Nina digs into this book, and let you know what she thinks as well.
I'd love to hear it.
I love it. Thank you so much again, Tyler. Thank all of you for watching or listening wherever you are in the world today. I'm your host, Jessica Dugas, and I want to remind you to do things your way. And we'll see you next time. Bye, everybody.